morning, YouTube. Today I'm at Fort Ontario in Oswego, New York, and it played a big part during the French and Indian Wars. So let's take a look around. The current version of Fort Ontario was built. It's the fourth one. It was built between 1839 and 1844, and the buildings have been are furnished and restored to what they were in the late 1860s. Earlier versions, way back in the French and Indian War, this did see some action. The British used this as they were moving on and siege of Fort Niagara, which is at the end of the Niagara River, and the French had held that since the French and Indian Wars. So this was a major jumping off point, or they came up the Mohawk River to the Oswego River and then up into here. So during the War of 1812, this was attacked by the British in May of 1813, so it would have been about the same time or a little bit earlier than when they had the Battle of Sackett's Harbor, which was the last video. And in this case, they did just take it over, did destroy it, burned it to the ground, and moved on. What I am now is at the powder magazine. Let's take a look and see what we can see. That would be boxes of cartridges and barrels of gunpowder. Now the door to the powder magazine is backed up against this wall and very narrow passageways around, which makes sense. If you got bombardments coming in, you don't really want an open doorway towards the ships that are bombarding you from out in the lake. So this side would have probably been the strongest side. The building right there ahead of us, that's the barracks for the enlisted men, and one end would have been, I'm not sure which end's which. One end would have been the urinal, one would have been the coal shed, and other than the urinal, they had running water from cisterns for that, but relieve yourself, you would go outside the fort out towards the lake, which obviously hurt security. Let's take a look at the officers' quarters. It's directly across the parade ground from the enlisted men's. The height of modern convenience, a two-holer. So this is the company quartermaster's office, as you see by the bundles of coats, and there's also set coats that are lined and stored on the shelves. And the quartermaster would have kept inventory and issued various things to the soldiers. Across the hall is the company office. This is where the master sergeant, or first sergeant, would have held sway over, and other sergeants as clerks. And you had to get by these guys to be able to get into the commander's office. And the post commander in the late 1860s was Captain Robert L. Kilpatrick. He'd lost an arm, badly wounded at Chancellorsville, and it never really healed right. So I guess it festered the rest of his life, but it didn't hamper him. So on the second floor was the office for the Army Corps of Engineers. And these officers, primarily West Point graduates, were not part of the command structure of the regiment that was stationed here. They actually lived off-site in private housing, and they're primary project about the fort in the 1860s was to oversee the ongoing construction of the barrel vaulted casements within the fort earthen walls, as well as the upgrading of the fort's decayed wooden vestment. So we're going to go up on the walls in a second and take a look at those. So the fort built more or less a star pattern. You can see where it goes out to a point. Well, guns in those galleries there could fire along in front of this one and vice versa along this one, and there are gun ports along the side. So basically anybody coming in trying to scale these walls would have just been swept clear with canister shot or whatever, but I'm sure these guys had to be careful not to hit these guys on this side. On the other side were these larger openings that you could see from the other one, and this is where you would have had cannon that would have been able to sweep the walls. There's space in here for 3 cannon along the way, and then on here more of these narrow ports for firing out, quite a few of them. And then way back in here there's more, but then you've got a big heavy oak door back into the powder magazine, which is really well protected. And that would have been where everything would have come out. So you can imagine during a battle, there's soldiers fire along here, other soldiers running back and forth with powder to fill these guns. I'm imagining that the canister shot and cannonballs would have been stacked in here awaiting use. So as I mentioned, the winters here are pretty brutal, and this was called a penthouse. During times of no crisis, they would move the cannons and store them in a shed for the winter, but because with the ice on the lake there wasn't any shipping and nothing to worry about, but they would put this kind of penthouse on it. It was made to be easily taken down and deconstructed if they needed to do action. And this is a smoothbore cannon that they would shoot white hot projectiles out towards the wooden ships, skip along the water till they hit the ship, hit the wood, burst it into flame, or do some damage. So, but as you can see here, you know, they said the walls weren't high. They did cover the sides with planks, but they didn't get to the point of doing the stone over here as they did on the other side. So the first rifle gallery that I was in, the first one I went down into was the one over there. This one was never finished. As you see, the walls pretty much stop and slope off. So you can see the construction method. Large stone slabs to cover it on the way up, and then cut stone blocks to make it. This is pretty much like the one on the other side. It just never got the big berm built on top of it and the big wall. Well, that ends my tour of Fort Ontario, and I drove by here on my way to college many times, and within a couple blocks I never even knew this was here. So I guess the lesson to be learned is, you know, look around your local area. There's some cool stuff. So I'm going to get back on the road, and let's see what I find next. See you later, YouTube.